operation of school boards from the school. I put on a law conference every year here in Louisiana on the issues that are coming up to help principals go forward. My research is all about reading cases on the law and then analyzing them and putting them in formats so that principals can use that to make their decisions. That's the research part we do in the articles. And I teach a school law course. This semester, as soon as I get off here, I'll be finishing up my syllabus for teaching a cohort in one of our parishes. And my favorite basic topic on all those is tort law, which is kind of what I want to cover with you, because you know the laws of your state and you know most of the basic things already, because certainly in Louisiana and others, to become an administrator, you almost always have to have a school law course to get there. So it gives you the basics behind it, but it's also always changing. What the law was last year is not always the same as this year. And what we found a little bit here is that tort law applies to everybody. Public schools, private schools, charter schools, everybody falls under that. So it's a little different from some of the other laws that might only apply to a public school. And when I bring up the topic, everybody can relate to it because they know what's happening in their particular school. Basically, tort law is the part you hurt, you pay. Meaning that if someone gets injured on your school grounds, whether it's your student, teacher, someone else, the school system may be responsible for paying to make them whole. And you don't want that to happen. Plus, it gives you bad publicity. If anybody gets injured or has a problem at your school, it doesn't look good going out. So what we, real briefly, the way it comes across in the courts is if you have a duty, and the first argument is there a duty to protect individuals on your campus? And so everybody's going to say, yes. What does that mean? Well, if you get sued, they're going to try to prove that you breached your duty to protect them. And people say, well, what does that mean? Because it sounds easy to put on an answer, oh, duty, and you breach it. The real key to that is, what is a breach? And breaches are all determined by facts. And that's what I want to get you prepared for here, is the facts that are going to come up. Because what a judge does, in Louisiana, only a judge can hear a case about a school system. Juries are not allowed. So only the judge does it. But what the judge is listening to is trying to figure out what happened. And they have a lot of things that they're listening to, all the testimony that comes in front of them. And when they get up, finished listening to all that, we read the cases on those decisions. And we've come up with all these cases, two determining factors that come into play. And this is my one little quick show with screen share that I should be able to do real quickly. Mark told me how to do this. Can you see that, Mark?
Yes, we can see it, Nathan.
Okay, that's the title. And when I wanted to show you, that's all the laws and cases on COVID-19. You can all see them. This is the brand new thing that's going on. This is why it's going to be so interesting to get forward, because there isn't anything out there. And what I'm going to lead you into is two simple things. And we're going to call real quickly, when you leave here, you're going to know the 2 P's. That's the extent of what you're going to need to know. What are the 2 P's? Presence and preparation. When the judge is listening to all these issues that come in, they want to know who was there, what they were doing, what did you do to get ready for all the steps that are going to go forward. So Sam, when we get to a case, and I'll throw this kind of quickly at you, you can't change the facts. I would never talk to my clients about changing what happened or misstating it in there. You're stuck with what happened. But when I get you as the attorney on there, there's a lot of testimony I can put in to establish facts ahead of the time. And this is the preparation part. You can do a lot of things now, and this is a perfect time of year because it's right before school gets started. You can put together things that make you look really good. And what I end up doing is putting you on the stand, meaning the principal or somebody else there, to go through all the great steps you did to prevent something. And what I like people to do in all my classes is to think and say, what would I like to be able to testify to if I'm called to court? Not what I'm stuck with, because you're going to have to say what happened. But if you think about, I really would like to be able to say I did this, or I really would like to be able to say we planned that. So now's your chance to go forward with it. What I love about the SAM process, you have daily meetings and you have the opportunity to get people together to talk about these kinds of issues, that when I get you on the stand, that judge is going to be so impressed that a school district had this kind of leadership that consciously had an effort to go through pieces about how to protect the people on their campus, brought in the right number of people to talk about it, and came up with decisions. Well, I don't know what your decision is going to be, but when I get to put you on there, you look great in front of that judge because of all the things that you did. So what do I go forward with? Let me make this in there. The real key to all of this and what the court looks at is what's called the reasonable person standard. I don't know who a reasonable person is, and I apologize for my phone. I don't know how to turn it off. I can turn the volume down though. Is with who's a reasonable person. School systems are a little different because they look at a reasonable teacher standard, which in a way is good because it's a higher standard, even though I know teachers aren't treated that way as much right now and we don't have that respect. But in the court system, they expect teachers to be higher than the regular person out there. So the key is, what would a reasonable teacher and principal do under these circumstances? That's what we're trying to establish, and that's what you come together. In your mind, think, what's reasonable? If you're trying to figure out what happened in the 4th grade, how would you decide what's reasonable? Well, I go back to say, what would a 4th grade teacher do? Who knows better than 4th grade teachers what 4th graders are going to do? They know all the different actions they're going to do. They know what to expect. They know who's going to run off during a field trip. They know what's going to happen the best. So you want them involved if what you're talking about deals with 4th grade. You don't want high school teachers coming in to tell you what to do because their students are different. And that's what the court's going to want to go to on that, is to figure those things out. Who did you go to and who did you use to make your decision? And what I'd like for you to do with this is, we talk about this for hours in class, but when you leave this, I want you thinking about the presence and the preparation and have some thoughts in mind when you go back with your group. And when the court's going to look at presence, they're going to want to know who was there. Was it the teacher aide, the principal? What were their qualifications? Are they a certified teacher, a substitute teacher? They're going to want to ask questions of how were they trained? What did you do to get ready for these people to come to school? And I know right now the training is different. You're not training them on other things. You're training them on protocols for how you handle the COVID-19 and students coming in. Well, they're going to want your records. They're going to want to know, what did you do to show how you took care of them? They're going to want to know what experience the person has. I would trust a 20-year veteran before a first-year teacher in the classroom. So you might want to do a little extra with the first year as opposed to the 20-year who knows more about what's going on. We're going to want to know, how long was someone in the classroom? What's our process for when you got teachers in there and others? The science is telling us that how much time you're in a room makes a difference. So are we monitoring that? Are we opening doors? Are we getting ventilation to flow through there? How are we trying to make sure that we don't have a problem with how long we're in there? For us on campus, dress is huge. We have mandatory mask requirements for anybody who comes in a building and anybody who's in a classroom. The only reason I'm not wearing one right now is because I have my office door shut and there's nobody else in the room with me. Otherwise, I would have my mask on, and that's a rule. Students, faculty, staff, everybody's got to have that. And so we want to keep very close with, how are you dressing and what kind of a mask? The shields don't work for us. They're not allowing that to go forward. It's got to be a mask. So these are the kind of things you want to set up into your school as you go forward. You want to know who's in the room and what's the distance. We have gone through every classroom here and made sure everybody's more than 6 feet apart, which means all of my classrooms are about half capacity or less. But we've measured and made sure that nobody comes within 6 feet of anybody else, as well as wearing a mask. And that's going to be real important, because you're going to have to show that nobody came within 6 feet, or why did you come within 6 feet, which is the triple problem that teachers are going to have. How do I teach when I can't get within 6 feet of my students? The nursing group, again, I changed the number of folks. When they work in their clinicals, they're requiring a face mask and a shield because of what they're doing and what spray could come back, not just from blood or other things, but if you're going to be working that close, they're putting a double effort with their students. And that's what you want to be thinking about it. Maybe the nurses in your schools may have to have double protection as opposed to what a teacher. Maybe the teachers need that double protection as you go forward. What are your custodians doing? Did you train your custodians? Do you have a plan in place for what they know what to do? How often are they going to be going into your classrooms and cleaning up? And when are they going to take care of that? Another key component to that people forget about, and I want you to be thinking, is you're responsible, and I'm usually talking to principals, for everybody on your campus, whether it's your teacher, your student, the copy repair person, the roofer who may be doing something else, a volunteer, if you even let a volunteer into your school. So you need to make sure that they know all your rules. Because as soon as something goes wrong, they're going to look back and say, principal, why did you let that copy repair person come in the office without a mask? What did you do to check them coming in? Each one of those is the presence part. So the judge is listening to all this to decide what they're going to do. The other one you can look at is the preparation. And there are a number of issues that have come in. I just saw a picture from one of the schools that I work with. Instead of a metal detector walkthrough, they have bought a temperature check walkthrough. I didn't know that those existed. I've been told they cost about $2,600 because I asked them that coming in. And for the amount of time, instead of checking every person who comes in with temperature, you walk through this device and it is supposed to read the temperature for you. My thought said $2,600 is a pretty good investment when you've got 500 kids that are going to be coming through there and everybody else that you're trying to operate. That was kind of a unique thing that's very different. It's not required. In fact, I should say before, none of the stuff I'm saying is required. It's the stuff you want to testify to when it comes up in court. You're going to want to know preparation. What are your limitations for numbers in a classroom and how did you figure that out? Or in the gymnasium, or in whatever room you're meeting in, how did you come up with the limitation in numbers that are going to show up? The training, did you train your subs? Did you train your bus drivers? Did you train your custodians? Because all those people are going to need to be trained as well when you come forward. What did you base your training on? And I won't get into politics and all this stuff because I said, I don't know what you want to tell the judge. I would want to tell the judge, I based it on science. And everything I do here on campus, I am super tight with the nursing college. And whatever they tell me to do, I do it. I trust them. They know so much more than me. So when we come up with decisions, we go to nursing and say, what's the best practice and what are we going to do? I would feel so much better talking to a judge saying I followed what the nurses told me or whatever your state medical person says you should be doing. That's the answer that you want to be able to give. You need to make sure you know your state and district rules because they may not be the same. And you can do more than what your state or district says, but you want to make sure you're in compliance with whatever their numbers are, their protocols. The busing part is going to drive me crazy. I don't know how y'all are going to handle busing. And in our area, it's limited to 40% capacity. So if you've got a bus route now that now can only hold 40%, that's at least 2 runs that you're going to have to make to get kids into your school if you have the same number of schools. So there's a big issue with that. There's also a documentation that I would be working on. How are you going to document that you did the training, who had the training, all these kind of issues? And what we're worried about on campus is roll. I have to document who was in class because if someone tests positive the next day, we need to track back to they were in this class. Here's the other 10, 15 students that were in class with that person so we can notify them. In the past, that wasn't as important, but if you have any kind of event on your campus, whether you have parents come in, you have somebody else as an organization, any kind of meeting, I would have roll and I would have contact information. How do you get back in touch with these people in case someone tests positive? That's a real issue that's going to start showing up. How are you going to determine temperature, or are you going to determine temperature? Is that something that the parents are going to do before they send their kids to school? Or is this something that you're going to do at your school? And how often are you going to do that? I've only had temperature done twice, and it was when I went into a major public building and they had the 2 tables there, and anybody who entered the building had to have their temperature taken before you went into the building. And that may be the steps that we're taking, which again, is going to cause you delays. And how are you going to line those kids up? Are you going to line them up 6 feet apart? Or are you going to let them get right back next to each other? Well, 6 feet apart, you may have them going around the parking lot and into the next street when you put them 6 feet apart. And I saw that, unfortunately, I had to go to a funeral And in church, everybody was separated and you were all fine. At the very end of church, in this Catholic ceremony, you have communion. So everybody who's separated all of a sudden gets in line right next to each other to go up and get communion. It's like it defeated the whole purpose of what we were doing before, because that's the ceremony in the peace. The next funeral I went to at the Catholic one, the priest went in each of the rows by himself and nobody moved from their row. It was very different. And you only had people sitting in every other row. But they had thought about it and they'd come up with a idea. I would look at lines and markings. Are you going to put arrows telling what people do? Or are you going to have contraflow in your offices and your hallways? In my building, it doesn't have 12 feet of hallway space. So I can't have people going both ways. So we're putting markings that everybody's got to go clockwise. So when you exit a room or door, you go left. Everybody's going to go left in the building so that we only have people going in one direction. We've got those kind of issues that you want to think about. What works best for your particular school? How are you going to handle the playground? Are you going to let them go on the playground? Because you know they're going to be playing together and congregating into that. So what's your process that you're going to follow to go forward? The other big one I want you to think about into this, because it just came up in my area and is a lot of flack. These are two things, unfortunately, with my biggest parish and group I work with. The first, the head of the school system, not the superintendent, but the one right directly under that, posted a picture on Facebook. Okay, you ought to get your eyes up right now. Social media is an issue. They're trying to limit exposure and setting up how kids are supposed to come to school. In the picture, she showed 8 girls all sitting together on the couch with one laying across them at a slumber party that showed everybody with no masks, no anything, and these are all high school girls. All the flack came into that. This is how you treat things at home. This is what you're thinking about, and you're in charge of our kids. Now, that's not illegal. That's not something else. It was just a disaster that they're trying to back up now. All kind of people are on the school system about that picture and the lack of thinking on the part of this person. The other issue is the chemicals that you're using. And I don't think about this normally. What chemicals are you using to clean your school and your sanitizers? If you've been watching some of the news in that, there was a recall for a while on sanitizers. There was a group of sanitation stuff that came from Mexico that had different chemicals in it that were really bad. But we were all desperate for that. So what sanitizer are you using? Are you using one that has the right stuff in it for kids? And the other issue is your cleaning supplies. They got a hold of the cleaning supply in there, and it says, keep away from children. Don't have this on the labels that are there. And they're using these to spray down all the tables, all the chairs, everything in the school system is using this chemical. And one of them says, well, you can get the pre-mixed or you mix it yourself. Well, the teachers are going crazy saying, I don't want to mix this stuff. I don't know what proportions to put it in. And it's being put on the teachers to mix these chemicals to clean their classroom. And I see a lot of head shaking and a lot of things going down. It's like, but this is what happens when you don't think about it. These are the things when a principal just does something in reaction to this. And if you're any superintendent, you're responsible for all your principals. Principals, you're responsible for all your teachers that go on your campus. The SAM team is the perfect chance to talk about these, discuss them with different people at different levels, get your nurse in there, your custodian in there, everybody that's going on, so that you can talk with them about the next steps. So I encourage you to use the SAM process with these kind of examples that I gave you. And this is just a few of them that I thought of since Mark asked me to do the coffee talk. And I could go on, and you know your school as to what your particular issue is. So you want to be thinking these things through so you can testify that we thought about it and we came up with the plan, even if it's the wrong plan. Even if it didn't work, you don't want to say you never thought about that when the attorney asked you that piece. The last thing I'll suggest to you it wasn't done here, and I don't know if you have time anywhere, but one of the areas I would consider doing is a volunteer practice run of my school and classes. See if the teachers would bring their own kids or parents would volunteer and try 1 week of school with all your procedures and protocols in there to see if they work. It could be bonus time. A lot of people would do it just to get their kids the extra education. But that way you can say, did it work? Did it not work? We tried a 1 week effort to run our school, and yes, we could do it, or no, we couldn't. That to me would be great evidence to go to your board or someone else and say, oh, I don't think we should open schools. We tried it for a week and it didn't work. So that's just some ideas. that you can run about on that. And I realize 20 minutes is not very long on it, but if it just gets you thinking and you remember the 2 Ps, which now is the 4 Ps, because the 4 Ps are process and protocol. You got to have them and you got to follow them. Because if you don't, if I'm an attorney for the other side, I'm going to kill you in court saying you had a procedure in place and you didn't follow it. So that's kind of the real brief on the coffee talk into that. And if you decide you'd rather have a margarita in your coffee cup instead of coffee after that, I understand. It's going to be one of those years, but I also think it's an exciting time. All of my people are really excited about what they can do with this, and they know they're going to take a lot of good things from this year that's going to make their future years better. And I know all you are SAM principals and SAMs out there, you're going to make it better because it's better with SAMs.
Nathan, that was really helpful, and I know everyone's going to clap and say thumbs up. This is really cool. A lot of comments as you were talking. Carol, you had a question you wanted to ask Nathan. Go right ahead.
So Nathan, I realize it's different everywhere, but what is your guess, or do you have one, about liability that a school or a district would have for a teacher or a student if, say, the school has not been given protective equipment, they do all their protocols, but they don't have all the stuff, or the district and the state itself, DOE or governor, do not agree with CDC protocols, so they aren't required. What's your thought? What do you think is going to happen out there with liability?
A lot of states have immunity in their school systems with public facilities, which means that they can't be sued. Louisiana just passed a law this session because of COVID-19 that protects school districts and universities. They can't be sued because people got COVID coming to that. All of those, though, are based on normal, reasonable person standards. I think the standard is going to be, was it grossly negligent? And I realize I'm throwing it's sort of a legal term, or reckless. And so they're going to have to prove that there was a procedure in place and you just ignored it. I think there's going to be issues when people have medical evidence that says we should do this and it's just ignored and not at least tried to follow. I'm really working with my faculty and others to make sure they're in compliance because we said we're going to do this. And as someone else has said, well, you said you would have this and you didn't, therefore you're reckless in your liability. So, I do know every state's different, which is why I follow medical advice over my political advice. And your states are all very, very different in that. And our state is very different. My governor and attorney general fight every day about what we should do and what we shouldn't do. Each one saying the other one's wrong. And I know some of you are in the same problem.
Thank you, Nathan. You know, a lot of principals are going to fall back on, well, I did what the district said. And I think you made it really clear that there's another level there, kind of a good to great thing. If you really want to be great as a principal, you're stopping and saying, well, what can I do to make this even better? I loved your idea of doing a practice run, see what it's like so you can see what the issues would be. The superintendent and school district in Georgia that ran into such problems with dealing with high school students in their building, they hadn't thought that through, and so they hadn't done a run through and it became difficult. Louis Goen, you had a suggestion that during Nathan's conversation. Would you like to share that?
Well, I just think that TimeTrack is a perfect way of documenting most of everything that you said a school needs to do. If you want to know who's been in a training session, you just make sure you associate everybody that was in that training session on your calendar or on your TimeTrack. If you want to know that you did a professional development activity, have it on your TimeTrack. And then if you are challenged, you've got all the data, you've got all the documentation you need. So taking advantage of SAM, taking advantage of TimeTrack, I think is a perfect way of accomplishing most of the tasks you suggested.
I would love to have that going into court and be able to throw that out there. I would win hands down. And I would bet that my SAM would be marking my calendar for follow-ups and making sure that I went occasionally to classrooms and others to see that the protocols were done. And it would be scheduled in my calendar and I'd be able to pull that up. And they say, how do you know you did it? It's on my calendar. And I always do what's on my calendar, right? Everybody does what's on their calendar.
And you know, Nathan, we've had principal after principal over the years tell us that their time track ended up giving them the evidence that they needed when they were dealing with not just a legal situation, but any situation where people are saying, well, what did you actually do? Because it breaks it down with great specificity. So you can even show the minute, the day, and if you use note track as well, then you also have notes to support you as well. Before we go to breakout rooms, Kevin Freeman had a funny comment. Kevin, you want to share it?
Oh, I put it in chat, just that every year when I hear the attorneys talk at the school law conferences, it always makes me want to drink. So Nathan, I appreciate the margarita comment.
That's just grand. That's just grand. Hey, everyone, I want to thank you for joining us today. We're going to go to breakout rooms now for those of you who would like to stick with us. During breakout rooms, you can chat about what Nathan talked with us about or anything else you'd like to. That'll last for about 20 minutes. I'll give you a warning when we're closing breakout rooms, and then we'll go ahead and close out. You'll receive an email later today with a copy, recording of the session Nathan just did. We'll also include any resources that might have come up. I know Jim is already online looking for that automatic temperature device that Nathan talked about, because he'll try and include a link for you so you can see what that is and how it can be obtained. Everyone, I want to again thank you. I also want to stress that this is going to be a school year of stops and starts. And you just have to be willing to say, it's okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be relaxed about it, but I'm also going to be diligent in making sure I do the things that I can do and that I can control. It's so easy to get into all the things we can't control, but as principals and SAMs, there's a whole lot we can control. And Nathan talked a lot about that today. So Nathan, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and click the breakout room button now. And we will break this out into breakout rooms. They're starting right now. So everyone, thank you so much. And we'll see you next week. Take care. Nathan, you did really well. Thank you.
I enjoyed it. I think my picture of that temperature thing's on my other device. I would send it to Jim or to you. I wanted to upload it here, but I think I put it on my iPad, which somehow doesn't really talk with my phone like it should.
No worries. I thought that it was just really good. And if Jim can find it, he'll put it on. And I'm sure he will. He's really good at that stuff.
If you can't, let me know, because I asked him that question when it came up. I said, when the people who posted, I said, well, where did you get this and how much was it? You know, I could imagine other people would want it with the time it saves. And when I found out the cost, it's like, yeah, that's something, but I would spend $2,600 if I had that many people coming in and out.
You know, I went to a jewelry store yesterday because Carol's birthday is coming up, and I had something in particular I was looking for. And they tested my temperature before I went in. I was impressed by that. That's the first commercial vendor I've seen do that. Hey, Karen, how are you?
I'm well. I was the only one in my chat room.
Oh. Let's see, Karen, let me see if I can.
You don't talk to yourself? I do that all the time.
I try not to do it though when the video's on.
Should have been a thing that said where you move to chat room 1.
Oh.
Looks like you didn't though. It's okay. Oh well. You can join us, that's fine.
Oh,
Karen is a former SAM principal in Illinois, and now she does coaching in Illinois and does a great job. And you enjoy it, I understand, Karen.
I do enjoy it.
Did you get that high wind they were talking about that was going to be hitting Chicago and something within the last day or two?
My area had wind and rain, but we didn't have any damage out where I am because I'm pretty far west. I'm almost to the Wisconsin border. His neighborhood is devastated, though he did not lose power. Everybody around him seemed to. So.
Yeah, it sounded horrible with the amount of,
A lot
I'm used to hurricanes here, but we have lots of preparation time and I'm far enough from the ocean. It's wind, but it's not nearly like being on the coast.